Today's guest has been a marketing coach, college professor, foreign affairs correspondent for CNN, and TV host extraordinaire, Peter Murphy Lewis. How are you today, Pete?
Fantastic.
Great to hear it. This is something that our audience probably isn't very familiar with, so I'm going to throw a slow ball right down the middle for you. But what is a fractional CMO and who needs one?
Ooh, fractional CMO. Most people would think the easiest way for someone to understand it is it's a freelance marketer. The difference between a fractional CMO and a freelance marketer is a CMO has been a chief marketing officer for a medium to large company, which means that you oversee strategy, strategic planning, all of marketing. You're intimately tied to the revenue team. You understand the marketing stack from top to bottom. More than likely, you've run your own company, so you know how to do budgets. So it's a big difference between a freelancer. So you're renting a full-time chief marketing officer for 5 to 10 hours a week. So you don't have to dish out
Hmm.
a salary of $300 to $600,000 and potentially equity. You get the brains for a fraction of the cost.
So basically, someone who's knowledgeable, skilled, experienced, that can run your marketing, but you don't have to pay them as much as you might have to if you were to hire them as a full-time executive.
Mm-hmm. Or test the waters as well.
Wow, okay. Wonderful. What are some common challenges you solve for your customers?
The most common is helping CEOs understand data.
Hmm.
CEOs that I work with are usually companies with 2 to 15 million dollars in revenue, and they don't know what to do with their data. They have too much data, or it's dirty, or the attribution's broken, and they ask me to make sense of it. There's secondary, tertiary things that I help with. I help scale teams. I help hire. But usually the first thing is I solve some type of really big problem with someone who doesn't know how to make sense of data.
Hmm. I think I've heard you talk about data before, and this is really interesting because if we look back on the trajectory of the last, let's say 10, 15 years, there was this whole thing about big data, right? Every company's like, we're going to get all this data, we're going to put the infrastructure in place, we're going to get the software and the people to run it. And there were big promises like we'll be able to monitor competitors and we'll be able to predict customers and trends and all that kind of stuff. It all kind of disappeared and went away as AI came along. Because as I understand it, the whole thought process was human beings have a hard time interpreting that amount of data. And so if we give it over to a computer, maybe it'll do a better job.
That is true. And I would also say there's two other things around data. When companies got a hold of a lot of data, they abused of that data. And, that may be the reason that Apple pulled some of the
Mm,
data away from Facebook, or it might just be a business decision for them. But when everybody got the data, people went insane with ads, with cold email, with account based marketing, like identifying people's IP address and what they're going to and modifying, your marketing based around their behavior. And a lot of people did it poorly. So that means people got careful, right? There's a significant percentage of people who are using ad blockers. And to give you a crazy instance, I'm working with a large client right now, and we had to shut down all of our ads for Google search because we have a competitor who every single day is using freelancers from foreign countries using VPNs, and all they do is fill up our pipeline with fake ads with real emails and real phone numbers, but not our customer. So,
mm.
so like people are getting a hold of all of the data and then playing it against you as well.
How important is it for a human who understands the data to review it and be able to leverage it in the business?
When I first engage with a new client who is struggling with too much data or dirty data, I try to take a step back and
Mm,
I approach data almost like the way that you and I would have in, our college thesis, or our master's thesis. I try to come up with a hypothesis that's common sense. I'm sure you heard smart entrepreneurs in the last 6 months saying AI is not going to replace common sense in the short term. So as long
absolutely
as we're
not.
able to make good judgment and we have emotional intelligence, we're still going to be needed. And so it's the exact same thing with data. Before I approach data, I look at the problem, I look at the company, I look at the product, I look at the service, I look at the team, I look at the client. I don't look at any data. and I come up with a hypothesis. And then I'll determine what is the pieces of simple data that I can do to confirm and move further along. And just a very simple example is focusing on someone's 80/20. So like David, if you know you have a website and you're selling some type of software service, let's say that it's $5,000 a month. Let's say that your revenue is north of $10 million a year and you have data everywhere. You've bought in every marketing stack that you can imagine and you don't know what to do with it. Well, the very first thing I would do is I would say, just show me 10 of your customers that have given you money in the last 3 months with the least amount of effort. Let me look at their customer journey and then let me get them on the phone. And then let's just focus on those people. I mean, let's start there. You have too much data. Let's focus on your happy customer who likes your product, who converted quickly, who made your life easy. Start there. Like, you don't need AI for that. Get them on the phone, old school, talk to a human being.
No kidding. And you kind of made the segue there for me too. But I started working in big tech earlier this year, would have been end of May, as a prompt engineer. I mean, first and foremost, I never expected to do that. I've been a freelancer or an entrepreneur or community builder my whole life. Never really saw myself as being terribly employable, but went through such a tough time and dragged through the mud that when this offer came along, I was like, this is the best thing I've ever come across to this point. So I kind of had to say yes. And it's my independent assessment. It's my opinion, no one else's opinion, that AI is just a long, long way off from being able to offer the kind of expert analysis that you're talking about, that we're hoping it can one day provide.
Mm,
And doing it the way we're doing it, we can't, because the
mm,
feedback loop is we feed it more data. The
mm,
problem is all the training data is used up. And now we've
mm,
got to create reams and
mm,
reams and reams of data to make it better.
mm.
So, yeah, we're not replacing common sense in the short term for sure.
Yeah, I have a 8-year-old, and as I see what percentage of my day I'm using some type of prompt and some type of AI, it's significant.
Mm,
An hour to 2 hours of my day, I'm using something that has enabled me to be more efficient, make faster decisions. I constantly think about what is it the way that I am kind of a prompt engineer that I can teach to my son because he doesn't use an iPad, he doesn't use a computer. How do I translate to him those things without a screen? So when it's time for him, he's going to be ahead of everyone else who's already using AI.
hmm Huge. There's some basic things around prompt engineering that if you learn them, you can get better quality results from ChatGPT or Jasper or whatever else you might be using. So I think that's incredibly valuable to teach your son that skill. I think that I'm the same as you. I still use the tools. It's not like I don't have any belief or faith in what's being produced. And I'm pretty quick to express my skepticism at the same time
I'm so
because
happy you mentioned Jasper.
hmm,
I think I was one of the first 200 or 300 people to subscribe to Jasper. I haven't
oh
heard it
wow.
mentioned in a while.
I think, the coolest thing about Jasper is you can choose what it is you want to produce. So right away, there's context established for the chatbot, right? It's like, I want
Mm.
to create a blog post or I want to create social media posts. So I think that was one of the value propositions of that software. How would you say marketing is changing with the influx of AI powered tools?
My mind first goes to bad decisions and goes to bad decisions by companies and people not going back to basics, not thinking about the old systems, the old strategies that work of storytelling, of building a human being that connects with others. When I start with clients, I hear them, say like, hey, I have this automatic chatbot that I fed it information, should be helping my clients. Hey, I'm using this new AI tool for all of my paid performance ad campaigns. I can see it's great, great visuals. Look at the font. It's beautiful. It looks like everything I see that's working, right? It looks like Apple or, it looks like everything on TikTok. And they didn't start off with understanding their customer. Now, I don't want to go to the bad place because usually I'm solving problems, but from a good point of view, from a marketing point of view, The strong brands are doubling down on people. They're doubling down on good storytelling. They're doubling down on optimism. They're doubling down on niching, right? Like it's funny when I talk to people that are not from the US. I'm sure Canada is pretty similar to the US in terms of Facebook, but if you go to, Europe, there aren't very many people using Facebook. And
Hmm.
I tell people how important Facebook groups are because they've niched down, right? They got in there quick. And some of my best communities that are great at marketing found one thing that unites me. And maybe me and you, David, it's Jasper Facebook group, or
Yeah.
maybe it's some type of podcast AI tool that you and I use to find podcast guests, and then we belong to some school community or some Slack community. So from a positive side, what I see how marketing is changing is I see we are getting more and more smaller groups that were united by one thing. If you think about marketing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? Like I work with banks, I work with software, as I mentioned, I work with zoos. They were doing one generic brush for their radio advertising, one generic brush for their TV, one for their website. You and I go to a website today, and good websites know how to change their message to you and me, especially when we come back, right? We fill out a little form and I tell them, I run a consulting agency. I have 10 to 20 employees that are on my team. I'm based in the US. I sell to people in the US, and these are the services I sell. Good websites next time will change their copy based around that. And that's good marketing. They're focusing on me. So I think that that's just an extension of tech from the general direction of us niching down, right? Like if you think about how many shows, I feel like maybe we're from the same generation, but you and I, when we were growing up, there were probably only 3 shows on a Thursday that we could watch. Today, there's 500 shows. The likelihood of you and I watching the same show on a Thursday is impossible, right? So everything's niched down, and that has strengths.
As I was writing down that question, that's kind of what I thought too, that like the basic psychology of marketing hasn't changed. And if you don't apply that, or if you apply that roughshod just using AI, it's not really going to get you the results that you're hoping for. I'm
Mm,
pretty sure, one of my mentors at a distance, Dan Kennedy, would say the same thing that,
mm.
oh, just because you can whiz bang produce a bunch of poor quality text doesn't mean your marketing is suddenly going to be that much better. I am going to put you on the spot a little bit. My audience is largely made up of artists, and artists generally want to gain exposure, get more gigs, and sell more of their artwork. So, how can artists improve their marketing to achieve these ends?
Oh, I love these questions. I love spitballing actionable advice that someone can do tomorrow on a limited budget. I'll have some follow-up questions.
Sure.
Safe to assume they have at least some audience on some platform. So they either have 2,000 people that follow them on Facebook, or 5,000 people that follow them on Instagram, or at least when they put on a show, they can find 100 people to go and follow them.
Not
Are
everyone would
we talking
have,
from zero? Are we talking from zero?
oh, not from zero. Not everyone would have thousands, but hundreds, I would say.
Okay. Next question is, how do they monetize themselves? How do they make money?
It's interesting because I feel like musicians get pretty reliant on either live performance or streaming royalties. There's some pretty decent money in live performance depending on the gig and where and your timing. Not a lot of good money in streaming royalties, which is where I often come in and I'm trying to teach artists about the many, many opportunities that do exist. I guess the other categories just depend on the type of artist, like a visual artist or a dancer, but that's kind of a starting point.
So I'm going to come up to the answer in a roundabout way. When I'm trying to grow my pipeline or grow my network, even unrelated to money, or grow my skill set unrelated to money, I try to find people who can help me that I can help. So when I go to a convention, no matter what I'm trying to sell, I try to think about what are one or two things that I know how to do that I can give away for free to everybody in the audience that I run into at
Yes.
cocktail at the hotel bar. And it's not salesy. It's ideally something that's not closely related to what I sell. So that's where my mind goes for myself as a consultant. So I'm a creator, call me an artist. I have 4 seasons of TV shows, just
Yep.
produced and host my own documentary. I'm writing a book. I would find a way to help others. For example, I'm struggling right now. I have a documentary that's going to premiere in a beautiful setting, red carpet for a large healthcare association. And I have no idea to do promotion, no idea how to do promotion. And I'm a marketer. I've just never promoted a documentary. It's the first documentary I've ever made. It's going to air in a month in person. And then what am I supposed to do with it afterwards? So there has to be some type of creator, some type of author, some type of artist in your community who already knows how to do some type of distribution. Well, find a way to help me, because I would give you so many free services. I would set you up a website. I would teach you how to find one piece of press and I could repurpose it across. So I would start off with bartering what you know how to do, because you don't have to sell me anything, right? And then I don't have to sell you anything. We both need something from each other. It's a lot easier to barter. That's where my mind goes for the first one. And then the second thing that I see, so when I work with solo entrepreneurs or people who are following their passion, so they might not know about business, but they're so passionate about what they're doing, they've turned it into a business, or AKA a job.
Yep.
I find solo entrepreneurs are generally really poor at bragging about themselves in a professional manner and repurposing the little bit of positive press that they have. So I'll give you an example and then we can try to translate it too. And feel free to interrupt at any point, David. But like I have at my marketing company, I have a really smart person on my team who is pitching me to media all the time. And it's a strong play for backlinks to make my website become stronger and stronger. So, 2 to 4 times a week, a teammate is pitching me to get a backlink to my website with a really smart, crafty comment and quote about me that's a little bit controversial, that pops, makes people memorable, makes me memorable. And then, that's from a backlink point of view, but then she repurposes that everywhere when it gets landed. She takes a screenshot. She writes up a message for me on LinkedIn that sounds like me. She even has a chat prompt that has my voice. She's downloaded 50 podcasts that I've been in. She put all of that into a script. She's come up with a voice that sounds like me. And then she repurposed that on Facebook, on Instagram, on our emails, on our lead magnets. So any artist who has just a very minimal amount of success, if you played one successful gig in the last, 6 months, find a way to repurpose anything positive from that event, whether it be reviews. If somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I saw you at the bar and grill in February and your connection with the people was so amazing. I just want you to know that was great. My boyfriend and I met that night, and the song that you sang there, man, you need to be comfortable saying what you just said is so beautiful. Can I get out my cell phone and can I record you? And that's something that I do. 2 years ago, I was going to conventions all the time for the healthcare for my podcast, which ended up becoming the documentary that's coming out. And people would come up to me and say, Peter, what you taught us to do on LinkedIn and to help out with the staffing crisis and long-term care is really beautiful. And I know that it's going to work. Thank you for giving me that away. And I would just say, that's very, very helpful. The only way I get more speaking gigs is if I can tell them that I was helpful. Can I get out my cell phone and record you? And then I take out my cell phone and I say, I'm going to ask you a question. Take me out of the question. And then I just get testimonials. And I get 1 to 3 testimonials every single time I spoke, no matter how small the convention is. So the next time you talk, get out your cell phone. You got to be comfortable asking. My experience with solo entrepreneurs, even more so creatives don't feel comfortable asking for help. So I think this is more of a mindset than what they should do for marketing. If they need something for marketing, reach out to me. I give an hour of free fractional CMO sessions every single day. Tell 2 of your friends to get together and I'll give you 3 hours together and we'll just brainstorm. It's more of a mindset.
Unlock the secrets to skyrocketing your productivity, boosting performance, and maximizing profits with my latest premium guide, the Productivity, Performance, and Profits Blackbook. Tailored for independent artists and entrepreneurs, this comprehensive resource is your roadmap to turning ideas into reality. Say goodbye to abandoned projects collecting dust on your shelves or buried in your hard drives. It's time to bring your vision to life. Grab your free copy of the Productivity, Performance, and Profits Blackbook now at davidandrewweeb.com/blackbook. That's WIEBE. Don't miss out on the key to unlocking your success. I might have to ask for that too. I saw your wall of love and I saw a name or two that I recognized, people that I've either been in mastermind groups with or otherwise. So I might have to jump in on that myself, but I love that. I heard four things there and I agree with all of them. I think you're spot on. Grow a list, right? Give something away for free. Doesn't matter if it's an email list or physical mail list or text list. I think the eventual goal is to get everyone's address so you can send them stuff, but grow lists, make that a priority. I heard barter for services. This is huge. I think there's so many people that don't do this, right? You could basically say, look, I'll write you a custom song for your podcast. Could you come write a sales letter for me? Like,
oh my gosh. I would record videos for that person for their Facebook ads and I would set up their meta campaign for them.
Right? Exactly. And these opportunities don't always go as expected or planned. I've had barter things fall apart too, but I think in the initial stages where you can't throw a ton of money at it, it is a brilliant way. I mean, Russell Brunson says that's how he did it in the early days. He could not have built that all himself. Third thing I heard was distribution. There's some incredibly convenient options for musicians, such as CD Baby or TuneCore that'll put your music everywhere, Spotify, Amazon, Deezer, wherever. Our authors too. There's some really great digital distribution services like BookBaby. I've used them. I think, that may not be the best of the best. I don't really know. I don't know what else is out there, but I would say that the benefit of expanded distribution is my first book, The New Music Industry, just keeps selling without me doing anything. And that's brilliant. And then leveraging PR and repurposing it. Oh my gosh. I wax eloquent on this in my next book, The Renegade Musician, comes out September 30th. So probably by the time this show airs, it'll already be out there. I'm huge on this. I think too many people will get a quote from Gene Simmons and say, oh, okay, that was great. And it's hidden on some website somewhere that eventually goes down and then they can never access it again. That versus what you talked about, which is let's take that quote, let's screenshot it, let's put it up on our website, let's show it at the beginning of our videos, let's show it in our press kits, let's show it in the PDFs that we send out to people in our outreach, which is, as you said, completely different mindset.
Yeah. I have such a beautiful PDF kind of pitch deck for me to take over people's podcasts. That's been a successful thing that I've been doing for my clients. I tell someone like you, hey, David, everyone wants to hear about you. Let me interview you for your audience so you don't have to talk solo into a camera. You just did it with your podcast with We Maple. And that PDF was created by an intern on my team and just ask me for it. And I'll give it to you and just copy it. And if you want the fully editable vision, I'll give you the editable version and just remove my name, remove my picture and put some quotes in.
That's amazing. I would love that. Absolutely. I think
I was speaking more really for your audience. I feel like you're way further down the road than I am, but anyone in your audience who needs a little pitch deck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I got your intention there. Definitely. So anybody who needs that sort of PDF template to slide everything into, I think it's great. You kind of made the segue for me here, which is, again, I think you did it twice, but when's the right time for like a solo practitioner or solopreneur to find their first team member? I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, right?
I guess before I answer that, I want to pause on the idea of mindset, and it has to do around delegation. I think that this is challenging for most people because it's hard for people to be a boss or to delegate because they're a perfectionist. And so they say, I can do everything better. A significant percentage of creatives tend to either, if I love the book Five Languages of Love, but a significant percentage of creatives love languages, acts of service. They, love people through their art, through their song. And those people in general oftentimes prefer to keep doing it themselves because that's the way they care for others. That's the way they show their appreciation. So it's hard for them to delegate. I
Yeah.
find that there's two types of people that struggle hiring and supervising and delegating the first time. It's perfectionists or people who don't want to ask anyone of anything. So kind of going back to the mindset of asking for a favor. If that's you,
Yeah.
I think you should work on those things first, right? Like if that resonates with you and you hear that, oh yeah, it's overwhelming for me to think that I need to hire an intern at a community college to help me with my website and then my social media because I don't know what I would tell them. I don't feel comfortable only paying them, $500 a month as an internship. I don't feel comfortable negotiating. If that resonates with you, then I think you need to work on that first. The second thing, if you struggle with delegating because you're too much of a perfectionist, then you need to work on that as well. So assuming those aren't the two issues, I would say that it's when you realize somebody can at least do what you could do to help you make money at 70 to 80% as good as you can. That means if the person does it 300% better than you, you should hire him yesterday, right? Yeah. But I hire a lot of people who will never do what I do as well as I do in a few areas, but I aim for 70 to 80%. That allows for me to actually be better at the two or three things that make me money so I can pay that person a fair salary and grow my company and so forth. But that is just an option. I know that there are certain things that are going to be on my website that have mistakes. I hire a lot of copywriters whose first language is not English. Doesn't matter. If they're creative people and they can do it 70 or 80% as me, then I will be able to do what will bring us revenue for the rest. So, if you're a musician and you make money doing live gigs, but you struggle keeping organized, hire your first intern, hire your first A, have them book, have them set up emails, have them be the nagging person who just sends emails over and over, have them manage your social media where they talk about you, let them know right away that this is not your voice so you don't feel uncomfortable when you're bragging about yourself. Say, my handle is run by my VA out of Nebraska. His name is Jonathan. You can blame it on me if he says anything, anything incorrect. Blame it on me. But he's my right-hand man, right? Like just start feeling comfortable and embrace the disgrace and run with your teammate.
Love it. Dan Kennedy talks about asking too, and his whole contention was people often think because they ask for more that people don't want to associate with people who ask for so much. And his finding was it was complete opposite, that people love you for asking. So that's a nice
It's true. I notice it from team retention. I work really, really hard at finding A players. And I have a theory, and I don't know if this is true, and there might be some type of human resources person who'll tell me that this is not true. But I find that when I put a lot of pressure, good pressure with the same tone that you and I are using right now, on A players around something challenging that I don't know how to solve, something that needs to be done better than I can do it, something that needs to be done faster than I can do it. A players love it. They love being asked to perform and do something. And I think that that's just an extension of what Dan Kennedy tell you. Like they'll fall in love with you when you ask so much of them, if you hire the right person.
I think that's exactly right. Especially if you're hiring the kind of people that feel underutilized. And I find A players often feel underutilized. So if you find the right people, that'll be the case.
I said to a client 2 or 3 days ago that was planning to take on some of my teammates and move them over to his team full time. And that's part of the things I do when I'm scaling teams. I build up teams and then pass them off and I disengage. And I said, be careful. These two people are A players, right? They started off as interns with me about 9 months ago. And these people, I can throw anything at them and they can handle it, anything. And I told him, I said, I think you think the same thing, but I'm going to say it out loud just in case, which is A players that don't have enough to do and that aren't challenged enough become poison on your team.
Yep. Very well said. Well, what I've got for you next is the free association or lightning round. This does not mean that you have to answer quickly. It just means that the prompts are not complete sentences. And so you get to answer them how you want to answer them.
All
The
right.
first prompt is bass fishing.
Bass fishing.
Hmm.
I did it 2 days ago with my son. I live inside of a zoo in Wichita, Kansas. There are 30 yards behind me right now where I'm sitting. There are a huge enclosure of zebras, and 70 yards that way in front of me, there's about 15 cheetahs. And I live inside of a zoo with my wife and my 8-year-old son, and we have two beautiful ponds on both sides of our house. And I go bass fishing several times a week.
That's incredible. In Canada, it really depends where you go. We can't find bass everywhere. I mean, sure, we've got some amazing sturgeon and trout and northern pike, but bass fishing being my favorite, my options are limited. Now that I moved out west, though, my options have opened up a bit. I can go bass fishing on Vancouver Island.
Well, you know, Vancouver's not too far from Seattle, and we have cheap direct flights from Seattle to Wichita for under $200 round trip. So if you want to come bass fishing, I have a tandem kayak. I have a camper you can sleep in front of my front house.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. I'll have to find some time to go down there. Definitely. The next one is Renaissance Man.
Renaissance man. My mind immediately goes to a friend, Joe Schaefer, who lives in Miami, and he's just a man who can do everything. He's kind of a man whose emotional IQ is way up there, his business IQ, his dad IQ, his husband IQ. He could fix anything in the house and also make the right decision for his family. What kind of people that you have up on your Mount Rushmore that you admire? That's where my mind goes.
Wow, I love it. I'm sure this is one you have some relationship to. Happiness is reality divided by expectations.
Are you kidding me?
I've done my research.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's it's right here. I got
Yep.
this tattoo on my arm. It's a smiley face for those that are listening to this on a podcast, and it's happy face equals reality divided by expectation. Comes from an extension of the phrase that I've heard my mom say most often to me in my life since I was a toddler, which the only thing that matters in life is your attitude. And I've had a lot of things taken from me. I've had close friends taken from me from tragic accidents, from mental
Mm.
health, grandparents that I wish I could have been with when I was living in South America. But so far, my mom's right. Like I wake up every day and you can take all my money. You can even take my son. You can even take my wife. Can't take my attitude.
I relate to it a lot. My cousin took his own life. My father died when I was 13 in a motorcycle crash. So, life really is about what you make of it.
I don't even know where you got that information. You did good research.
We have some good VAs. No, it was definitely me. Success is in the prep work.
My mind goes to my learning disability. I have severe dyslexia and never knew it until
Mm,
probably 10 years ago. So I was 30 to 35 years old when I realized I had dyslexia. And I was a straight A student in high school, in grade school, middle school, valedictorian high school, finished college in 3 years, straight A's, first in my class in masters, studied my PhD. And for about 27 years of my life, I didn't realize that I had something holding me back that severely
wow.
hindered me from being the smartest person in the room to making life easier. And I never knew it. And I did so much prep work to just get by. Looking back on the amount of time, I think that everything I have done in my life, other than speaking, so like podcasting and television, almost everything that I have done, I've had to do harder than everyone else because they're smarter or because they can
Mm,
read or because they can comprehend things easier than I can.
hmm. I'm curious how this next one's going to hit you then. Books that have helped you on your journey.
Five Languages of Love.
It's a good one.
I think you name dropped Derek Sivers
Yep.
with CD Baby. So I think the book is it Hell No or is it Hell Yes or No?
Yep.
It's a good one. The Obviously Tim Ferriss,
Mm.
probably more his podcasts than his books, but his books were important to me. Those are the kind of recent ones. There were some that were fundamental for me in high school and college, but they were more about who I was at that point in life, and they don't have as much impact on me today.
Yeah, I think Derek and Tim specifically talked about this, but it's all about how a book hits you in the moment. I mean, sometimes a good book's a good book no matter what, but then sometimes there is a timing for it.
Mm-hmm.
And what matters in life
Oh, I feel, Dave, you're gonna make me cry on a Thursday afternoon at 6:30.
makes me happy as a show host.
My wife and I met in 2010, and one of the things that we had in common was that neither one of us wanted to have kids. We had more in common. We both
Mm.
loved to travel. We both liked languages. We both liked friends and slow life and slow travel. Quality time was one of our love languages. But about 7 years into our relationship, she told me she wanted to have a kid. And I said, "This is not fair. You changing the rules of the game on me." So we went to therapy. The therapist, who is such an important person in my life, in our life, Marcella, talked us into adopting a dog. So we adopted Feffy. And then it got to the point in therapy, and she said, "Peter," she said, we've been here long enough. There's no reason for us to keep coming to therapy. You have to make a decision. Do you want to live the rest of your life happily without a kid, without Coney? Or do you want to live the rest of your life happily with Coney and with a kid?" I gave in, and I've never been more happy that I lost that fight in therapy,
Mm.
because the arrival of my son Quentin to me is what matters. My wife, what matters. My parents. I just talked to my parents about 6 months ago into moving from our hometown about 3 hours away from where I am right now in Wichita, Kansas. And I asked them to retire as close to me as possible. I'll take them to the doctor. I'll take care of them if they don't need to go to a nursing home. I want to see them every single day. And I see them every single day for 30 minutes to an hour for a glass of beer or ride with my dad to take my son to school. It's family. Yesterday, my son asked me in the car ride back from school, he said, "Dad, where do you want to live? If you could choose any place that you want to live." And I said, "I don't care as long as I'm within a mile of my parents."
I think one of the reasons I really wanted to include this in today's interviews because, like, for the last 5 years, I've really lived very unattached, which had its own benefits. Not being tied to one location, being able to travel, being able to live out of Airbnbs, not having to have a home, all that kind of stuff. And I think I'm ready for the infinite possibilities of settling down and putting down my roots again.
Mm,
And I love Vancouver, so it seems as good a place as any. It doesn't mean I
mm,
don't want to travel more. I think I do,
mm,
but not in the capacity I was. Because
mm,
what it brought out of me, that experience, was one really angry book called Digital Nomad. And then one that's coming a little later called The Fairy Letters, which is also angry in its own way, but
mm,
and it's almost a spiritual successor to Digital Nomad. So in a weird kind of way too, like personal development, one of the biggest things I learned, it's empowering, but equally you have to decide. And that was like you can decide what matters in your life. And I got to a point where nothing mattered, not as in like I want to die, not like that, but like I realized, oh, nothing has to matter unless I say it does.
mm,
But that's the freedom to choose, right? Is what I'm now
mm,
exploring. Freedom to choose what matters.
mm.
So tell us about your forthcoming book. You alluded to it earlier.
Doesn't have a proper name yet, but
Mm.
I can tell you the focus. It's about 80% finished in terms of the skeleton and the meat. It is a book around mentorship, around interns, around empowering a younger generation. From a young age, I had important mentors in my life. In middle school, it was a gentleman that I met at Christian summer camp who became kind of like a uncle figure for me from about the age of 13 to 19. In high school, I had another person that I met there. In college, I had a number of college mentors who continue to be part of my life. Same in when I moved to Chile. And at about the age of 27, when I started my very first travel company, I started to mentor people, and it was very organic. I didn't realize it at the time. It probably took me 5 years before I realized I was good at it. And then I started to have a whole bunch of interns come through my travel company. Hundreds of interns come through my travel company. Probably at least 30 French people, 15 Americans, 40 non-French Europeans, another 50 Chileans. And I just had a knack for it. I feel like someone taught me and my family and my schooling. And as I've grown my agency, my consulting agency, Strategic Pete, over the last 4 years, and then my travel company before that, I always work with interns. Every single person in my consulting agency right now, except for one, was an intern with me for a 6-month internship where I taught them about strategy and thinking. And I turned all of that process, which is a process, it's a very structured process, from about the day we post the job on Dynamite Jobs to about 30 days after they start onboarding with us. So it's about a 45-day period. I have all of that into SOPs and surveys and job descriptions and Loom videos and books you have to read and project management tools and what to expect. And it's a book to find A players that are of the younger generation, ideally someone with a chip on their shoulder, and cultivate and to incubate them into becoming leaders and happy and professionally satisfied. And that's the book. It's one of the, I think I shared with you, the second thing that I help people do is I scale teams after I help them make sense of data. I take internship programs and I find amazing teams and amazing culture, and I help people make money with people who want to be there.
That's incredible. And I think for a lot of artists, that is the dream, is to have a team. I don't think it's a good thing to be naive about as an artist, because I think many of them are thinking, oh, it's going to be hands off and I just get to focus on the art, which is the goal, of course. But I think there's a certain amount of work involved in having a team too. And you don't want to, as Dan Kennedy would say, you don't want to hand over something like payroll. That's something you want to make sure you're keeping the eyes on. We know lots about the music industry and how artists have been taken advantage of too. So it's just one of those things of being aware of what to care about, I guess, to go back to something I said earlier. Well, thank you so much for your time and generosity, Pete. Is there anything else I should have asked? And feel free to share website URLs or whatever else you'd like to with our audience.
I don't have anything to share. I guess my only ask is, if there's anything that your audience has heard in this conversation that they think I can help out with, reach out for free. There's not a single person that reaches out and said, hey, I'm an artist, I don't know how to do this, or you mentioned this, or can you help with this? If my team has the bandwidth, I'll give it away for free.
Wow. Incredibly generous. And please, 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 listeners, viewers, take advantage of this opportunity, because they don't come around every day. Thank you, Pete. This has been fantastic.
See you soon. Let's go bass fishing, David. Thank you.
Let's do it.